Hi, Bob. Hey, thank you for coming. Just asking you a question about what were your feelings like coming in from the airport, Auckland Airport, to the Herald Theatre yesterday afternoon to see the A Thousand Hills for the very first time, knowing that it's been sort of kicking around for the last 3 years.
Yeah, look, it's a really mixed bag of emotions there, Mike. And I'd obviously seen the reviews, and I was kind of excited and anxious at the same time because I'm not really a theatre person, and apart from taking my granddaughter to the occasional pantomime, I would never go. So going to the theatre itself is a whole new experience for me, and going to a theatre where you've got a play about a very emotionally charged event which I knew about, and also that you're actually watching somebody who's playing a representation of you in that play is very freaky and a bit sort of hard to sort of comprehend. So there was that sense of excitement mixed with anxiety. Quite an interesting sort of concept.
And when you got to the theatre, then you're actually about to go and watch the show. You're sitting in the theatre. The lights go down. Actually, well, the drumming started. Tell me how it felt watching it, and then basically how did it feel after you'd seen the show?
Right. I mean, the impact of the music just coming in was astonishing. I mean, I guess I had preconceived ideas about theatre, not being a theatre person, that there'll be all this kind of elaborate sort of set and lots of curtains rising and falling and all the rest of it. But the simplicity of the set was quite striking at first, and I thought, I wonder how this is all going to work. But just right from the start, from the drumming, the atmosphere, and the emotion that came through it, within a few minutes, I actually was there within that camp, looking at the scenes as though I was actually in Africa. It was quite astonishing. Really was absolutely one of the most beautiful pieces of emotions that I've seen. It was very, very thought-provoking for me, and there were times where particular scenes which brought memories flooding back to me, and quite frankly I had to take my glasses off and wipe my eyes because they were very they brought some very strong memories back to me.
When the show had finished, and some of the reaction of people, or what were some of the questions you got after the show and people talking to you after the show? What did people say to you afterwards?
Right, there's a lot of people were asking about how was it, what made me go to do this work with Red Cross. Was I brave? Was I scared? All those sorts of things. And asking about some of the stories. Was that actually what it was like when I was in the camps? And so there was a lot of interest and a lot of curiosity particularly about what would make somebody, a pretty average Joe Blow like me, go out and do these things. And that was really a question that I really couldn't answer in any kind of tangible way. It basically arose from an inner sense that I had during the early 90s. And I think it was when I turned the age of 40, and that I guess that all of a sudden that here I was, done everything in my life, and there was something there that I needed, I guess, to put something back might be the best way to describe it. And having the privilege to work for Red Cross, and particularly working in that situation in the post-Rwandan genocide, given the complexities and the challenges there, was something that I certainly hadn't bargained for, but it did provide me with one of the most profound and enduring experiences of my life, which I will always be grateful for the Red Cross for giving me that opportunity.
It's the day after the show now, it's the next morning, and you've obviously had a night to sleep, and you're going to go back to Nelson later on this afternoon. Now, on reflection, is there any other things that you kind of can talk about the experience of seeing the play?
Yeah, in actual fact, that's quite interesting because immediately after the play, and given the fact that there was this mixture of the newness of theatre, seeing something which I've been involved with, and particularly seeing somebody portraying yourself as part of that play, and then the questions afterwards kind of sidetracked me a little bit. And it wasn't until the next morning, and I woke up quite early. I actually had a dream about the place. It just shows how powerful it was there. And I woke up in the morning, and my mind immediately went back through several of the scenes from the previous night. And when I was actually running those scenes back through my mind, I quite literally had goosebumps. Really, really powerful sort of emotion there. And in fact, I was trying to sort of come to terms with the show and the experience as a complete whole experience. And the only word that I could really come up with which could do any justice to it was that it was just beautiful.
For the people who haven't come from your experience, and those people in the theatre last night who went in there as almost as innocents, who didn't have any understanding of that world, maybe some of the historical understanding maybe, but what do you think they would have experienced last night in the show?
Right. And from the reaction of the audience during the play and the comments that were made afterwards, I think a lot of people really began to appreciate the sense that how wonderful it is to be able to live in a peaceful country like New Zealand. And it's a thing that we all take for granted. And we've got to remember that perhaps 80% of the world's population are living in situations of deprivation of various kinds, insecurity, and although we might have a bit of a bellyache about the government of the day and that we've got to pay a lot of money to tax the car, these things, in the light of what goes on in most of the world, are completely minuscule. We don't have to worry about the food on the table the next day, or the fact that we might get stopped by armed soldiers on our way to work and that our family might be dragged away from us in the middle of the night. This is the reality for some people in a lot of places of the world. So that was something that came across quite strongly, I think, for people, that a real appreciation of things. And that was actually part of the play, because it wasn't just about the situation in the camp, which people could have quite easily detached themselves from, as you do when you see things on the TV. You know, that's them, this is us, okay, nothing that we need to sort of concern ourselves about. But the way, how cleverly the home life of Francois with his mum, which was just the same as it could be in any situation, in any country, in New Zealand, you know, happy family life, suddenly put into an absolute nightmare of evil. That sense of juxtaposition between normality and what could happen was something that I think was very powerful for people to see that and appreciate it.
And what would you say the theatrical experience was, just purely as what they, you know, what do they see in terms of on stage and as an audience member? What do you think they were exposed to?
I think that the simplicity of the set, but combined with the sound, the lighting, and particularly the music, that beautiful African music, and the drumming, was something which was basically a piece of art. It made you actually go into the stage as though you were actually in the camp. You were in that area where the gangs were coming along, and you felt the terror. You felt all those emotions, because the play forced you to actually create that imagery in your mind, because of its simplicity, but because of the evocative nature of the storyline, and also the dramatism of the music, and the lighting and all the effects. It was really beautiful.
And at the end of the show, do you think it was a sad experience, or how would you explain the whole experience
Well,
for an audience member?
For an audience member, I think a lot of people will have gone away from that play with certainly a very challenging thought for a long time, and that is really what, for me, makes this play something really special. It's not a sort of a bit of a quick roller coaster ride, which a lot of things you see on the TV are. This is something which you would be talking about for a very long time, and you would remember it perhaps for years into the future, because it was the way that the play actually got into your mind. It actually got into your mind in that space, and it actually provoked those emotions. And there was a lot of people in the audience I could see there that were actually breaking down and crying at some of those emotional events, as I did myself, which is something that I never do. That's quite amazing, really quite amazing.
It sounds so sad, but was there any kind of humour in there?
Oh, brilliant! Actually, the fact that there was certain episodes, which most of them are actually true, created a sense of, and that's what life is like. In when you're working in a refugee camp, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of hope, and aid workers particularly have to cope with some of the trauma and the challenges by having a really good sense of humour. And in fact, it's probably an essential prerequisite for anybody who's an aid worker, so that you can actually provide that opposing force, so that otherwise you would just completely go under with the horrors of things. And that was very cleverly done in the play, to provide this clever balance of just in putting a little bit of very clever humour, and particularly I like the inquisition about life in New Zealand, and how the character Nick made the point that there was 2 languages in New Zealand, English and Maori, and that he didn't have a clue about anything about Maori. And Francois, who could speak 5 languages, here's an African, could not believe that in a country where there was 2 languages, that a person could only speak one of them. And that was quite shocking for him, and obviously a highly bit of embarrassment for for Nick. And I think the audience took that on board, as well as a poignant point there, that yes, we have marginalised a whole culture basically in New Zealand, in a sense, and learning the language is really important.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mike.
Awesome.
And very great pleasure.
Okay, that's Bob Askew. Mike, you might want to I'll keep it going and just say hi. I'm Bob Askew. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, g'day. My name's Bob Askew. My name in the play A Thousand Hills is Nick Halliday, which is being portrayed by Andrew Granger. This is a story that touches on the experiences mostly of Francois Biamana, who was my interpreter in the camp, and it also shows how during my time as a sanitation and water engineer at the camp, that we developed an enduring friendship, one which led to Francois, as he calls himself now, to come to New Zealand as a refugee, and to have been able to become make a success of his life, and to bring up a family in a lovely, wonderful country like New Zealand, which is really a privilege.
Just close it, yeah.